Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be going over the 6 launch titles for the Sega Genesis. Just to get this out of the way right off the bat, the Sega Genesis is my favorite retro game console. I don't know what it is about it, I just really like it. So in North America, the Sega Genesis launched with six games. Altered Beast, which was the pack-in title at first until it was eventually replaced. Space Harrier II, Thunder Force 2, which I think is a pretty good game. Super Thunderblade, which I hate that game so much. Last Battle, which I think gets a lot more hate than it really deserves. And Tommy Lasorda Baseball, which I don't really like that much, but I just think there are other baseball games out there that are a lot better. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with Altered Beast. It's a pretty good game for what it is, it's just relatively short. So Altered Beast was one of several arcade ports that Sega brought to their system. This was kind of what they did. They just needed to bring a lot of their arcade ports over because at the time they were kind of struggling to get people to really sign up for the system, and also there were a lot of exclusive rights that they had to deal with from Nintendo. I've gone over this game before, and I haven't really changed my mind on it too much. I think it's an okay game, it's just kind of boring and repetitive. You play as a Roman centurion who was grabbed by Zeus. I have no idea why he went with a Roman centurion instead of, getting somebody from the Greek city-states to actually help him out, but, whatever. So you play as a Roman centurion, and in each level you collect 3 power-ups to kind of turn yourself into one of several werebeasts. Whether it's a werewolf who can shoot projectiles at people, or it's a dragon that honestly should have been the final thing that you turned into. I really love the dragon in this game. So you collect your 3 power-ups, turn into your werebeast, and then you fight a fairly big and detailed final boss for each level. Like I said, this is a short game. There are only 5 levels to it, and if you get good enough at it, you can beat the game pretty quickly. For me, I've never been that great at it. Once I get to the 3rd level, everything just kind of falls apart for me. One of the more annoying things about the game, which works with the gameplay but I find it annoying, is after each level you're stripped of your power-ups and you just have to repeat everything all over again. It's really more annoying than anything, just because you're basically doing the same thing. Occasionally you run into these blue cows. I don't know why it's always blue cows. You think they could have come up with something better after the first level, but whatever. So this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, and I have quite a few issues with it. Aside from just how short it is, I'll tell you what it does do. It does show off what the graphics on the Genesis could be. The sprites are very detailed, and, it does a pretty good job of the whole scrolling thing to it. So it's graphically impressive for the time, but the gameplay just is kind of boring after a little while. So the games that I'm going to mention weren't released yet, but I think they would have been a better option for, a pack-in title, if they were going to stick with the beat-em-up style, obviously. I think Golden Axe would have been a better choice, because that's just the better beat-em-up game than Altered Beast is. Unfortunately, it hadn't been released yet. Fair enough, I guess. I just think that it would have been a better title than what Altered Beast was, especially since I don't really like the 2D beat 'em ups. I feel like they should be on like the more isometric angle or kind of a slanted play field like Golden Axe or Streets of Rage was or Double Dragon is. That just allows for better gameplay from a beat 'em up, at least in my opinion. So this would get replaced with Sonic the Hedgehog as the pack-in title. One of the reasons that's given is because of the religious connotations with Altered Beast. I think it was because Sonic was just a better game, and Altered Beast got kind of boring after a while. We're probably never going to know the actual reason, though. Next, we move on to Space Harrier II. This is another fairly good game. It is a 3D rail shooter that was based on the first Space Harrier, which was an arcade game that looks really cool. When you saw the cabinet earlier, that arcade game looks really awesome. And if I was picking another game to kind of replace Altered Beast, it would be Space Harrier 2. I think it's just a much more impressive game than Altered Beast is. You have like a fake 3D environment that's going on here, especially with your enemies and the obstacles scrolling into the screen. It looks better than what Altered Beast does, at least in my opinion. It's not as detailed as Altered Beast is, but I think the scrolling, the fact that you're kind of moving around in a fake 3D environment, it just looks better, in my opinion, and I think the gameplay is a lot more fun. There would be more games in the series going on later, also with like I think it's like a 3D version that played along with like the 3D glasses on the Master System and something else. But that one I haven't had a chance to really play, so I'm not gonna talk too much about it. I like to sometimes call this game the Game of Lies, mostly because the title is Space Harrier. You're not in space, and you're not playing as a Harrier. You're a dude in a red jumpsuit with some sort of like galactic vacuum cleaner type thing, and yeah, it just feels a little bit weird. I know that there is a story in Space Harrier. I never really cared to learn what it was, because at the end of the day, you're just shooting stuff. Especially, like, the robots here. Like, that's just so much fun. This is the one that just feels the most like a video game for me. You're a dude that is shooting a bunch of just random objects in different worlds. It looks really great, and Space Harrier 2 is just a lot of fun. I definitely think if this had been the pack-in title, it probably would have been, I don't know if it would have made things better for Sega, but I would have thought that it might have helped a little bit more. Just because with Altered Beast, it's a very short game. You kind of have to do a lot in order to experience it. There's a lot of trial and error. With Space Harrier 2, you get the trial and error, but it's a little bit like Mega Man, where you can just kind of go to whatever level you want. You don't necessarily have to start on level 1. You can pick the stage that you want to start off on and just go from there. And like I said, it's just a more visually impressive game, and I thought it was a lot more fun. So we get into the third game, and that is Thunder Force 2. This is the follow-up to Thunder Force, which was released by Technosoft on a bunch of computers back in 1983. And the second one was again, released on some computers and also the Sega Genesis. The first and the second games in the series kind of stand out a little bit more for me because they're free roaming shooters. So you have a top-down view, you can just move around, do whatever you need to do, and I feel like I have more control in a shooter like this than I do in the side-scrolling ones. Granted, I like a lot of the side-scrolling shooters more, but this just feels different and a lot more fun to me. In the second game, there are some side-scrolling levels, so it doesn't just stick with this format, which I kind of... It's kind of a shame to me. I would have liked them to have stuck with the top-down format, because this one feels just a lot more fun. Just playing something like this feels a lot better than, when you move on in the series and you play Thunder Force 3, and that's a side-scroller, an incredibly hard side-scroller, but still a very fun one. And they just sort of abandoned this top-down style for more of the traditional side-scrolling shooters. Technosoft has a pretty interesting, game, kind of an interesting game library, but an even more interesting kind of history to it. They got started in the 80s, and they released a bunch of games, most of them shooters, but they also released the Hedgehog games. And those are pretty fun strategy games. The second one made it to the Sega Genesis, which I've had issues with it, but I feel like I would have liked it a lot more if I had the manual and kind of knew more about what was going on. They continued releasing Thunder Force games up until the early 2000s, and that's when the company kind of went under, unfortunately. And they ended up getting bought out by a pachinko company, and then Sega winds up buying their game library in the mid-2000s. So all of their games are now technically owned by Sega, which is why they can show up on a lot of the game packs and everything, because Sega doesn't have to license those, they can just go ahead and release them. When I looked over Technosoft's game library, it was kind of weird to me seeing just a bunch of stuff I had either never heard of or a lot of kind of the same style of game. I would have thought that they would have tried to have branched out and done something different, but I just didn't really see it when I was looking over all of that. Granted, I wasn't able to play a lot of those games, and I was just kind of just looking at the titles and the description. So I could have been wrong, but it was what I saw at the time. The Thunder Force games, though, are really good, and I'm glad they're still living on, even if Technosoft has kind of gone under. Okay, now we get into the games the ones that I really don't like. And we're going to start off with Last Battle. And this is a game that I'm really torn on. There's stuff in it that I should really like, but there's something about it that I don't like at all. I think the biggest thing that I don't like is that it's supposed to be Fist of the North Star, but they don't really lean into that. Fist of the North Star is an awesome anime and an awesome manga, where you have Kenshiro who just brutally murders people. Like, he hits people and their heads explode. Here, he hits people and they just kind of fly off the screen into God knows what. You do get these side-scrolling boss fights, which are pretty awesome, and here's where the enemies do sort of explode. Not really that well, because they cut a lot of the blood out of this one. They also took the names for all of the characters and just kind of tossed them into a blender. So instead of Kenshiro, you have Arzik. I don't know what the fuck they're doing with that one, but whatever. And then everyone in here that you have dialogue with, it sounds like they've been smacked in the head with a shovel before they start talking. It's really goddamn weird. What I do like about it, though, is the power-up system is pretty cool. It feels a little bit like an RPG, but not really. You gain power as you fight, and that makes your hits a lot stronger. I like the alternating paths and everything. That's pretty cool. But there's just something about it that I find absolutely infuriating. And now we get to Super Thunderblade. I can't find any redeeming qualities in this game. Just nothing that I actually like. If I rented this game on the weekend, I would have been pissed off. Like, this is just... Oh god, I just really don't like this at all. This opening cutscene where your helicopter comes up is probably the best thing that I found in the game. And that's me stretching for something. One of the big issues is that this game is based off of Thunderblade, which, when you looked at the arcade that I showed earlier, that's how the controls should be. You should be using that joystick to fly around on. It would just be a lot better than trying to use your D-pad to move around. And yeah, that, and it was just so goddamn annoying to track where the enemies were, where the projectiles were coming from, how close they were to your ship, where you needed to move in order to dodge. It was just, oh my god. And also, this whole, third-person rail shooter thing does not work for me on a game like this. This should have been like a top-down shooter, or like a side-scrolling shooter, so you can actually see what the hell is going on. It works a lot better for, Space Harrier, where they got the scaling right, and they didn't have the enemies immediately start shooting at you when they come onto the screen. Oh god, I hate this game so much. I hate playing it. Apparently, there is a plot to this game. I don't know what the plot is, and I didn't really care to find out. It's based off of a movie called Blue Thunder, which I hope to God has something to do with a helicopter. I'm just going to guess that it does, otherwise it'd be really weird. I will say this. I think the boss looks pretty cool on this first level. It's a giant tank, but I don't understand what the hell is going on in this game. I get that it's an arcade game. It's not technically going to be realistic all the time. But what the hell is going... Maybe I should have paid more attention to the plot of the game. It wouldn't have helped me understanding anything else, but maybe I would have figured out, why I'm going down this endless road of everything that's trying to kill me, but whatever. So, baseball games are not my thing. I'm just not really a fan of baseball, and I don't really care too much about baseball simulators or anything like that. I do like the RBI Baseball series, and Baseball Stars, and one or two other games that are on the NES. I'm just not a huge fan of games like this. So I probably didn't give this one that fair of a chance or anything like that. I will say this is one of the first, licensed sports games that Sega came out with. They would follow it up with Pat Riley's Basketball and Joe Montana Football. Joe Montana Football was the only one that really turned into a bit of a series, which is probably for the best, since the first game was kind of based off of Madden, and the other games kind of moved on from that in a weird direction. But yeah, this is a game that I just did not really like that much, and most of that is just me being biased for not really liking baseball games. So those were the 6 launch titles for the Sega Genesis. I think overall they did a pretty good job of showing off what the system could do. Looking at them now, I probably have a very different reaction to what I would have had back in 1989. That being said, I think most of them, or at least 4 out of those 6, are pretty good. I can't really say much about, Tommy Lasorda Baseball, because I'm pretty biased against baseball games. And I think Super Thunderblade is probably the worst out of all 6. Altered Beast did a pretty decent job of showing it off, but I would have replaced that with Space Harrier II as the pack-in game. And I still think there's something about Last Battle that I could probably like, and I can understand why people like it. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let me know what you think about the games as well. See you all later, and have a great day, everyone.